Staring up at the red-tinted sky, I watched as a large rectangular ship broke through N-2390's atmosphere. Right on schedule, I mused, as the huller grew larger, drawing near the scrapyard. "Looks like she'll be carrying a full load," the older man beside me said with a grunt. I nodded, observing the movements of the ship as it flew over the dumping grounds. I knew, just as Samson did, that the freighter dock's star side was the Prince Albert III. The vessel serviced the Cyanu system, which was one of the wealthiest in the Federation. Our planet was what some would call a junk planet. With its low habitability classification, the Federation used it as a large recycling center. They shipped in metal waste from around the Federation-controlled planetary systems. Then, workers sorted, melted down, and shipped out the refined metals to be reused. Those who lived on the planet had found that they earned far more by salvaging the discarded tech in the scrap than by working in the factory, and several residents lived solely on their earnings from reselling repaired items. I fought the urge to cover my ears as the sound of the approaching ship's engines grew to a deafening volume. Not that I could do so with my helmet on, of course. The helmet and my salvaged bodysuit did not have sound filtering capabilities, but what they did have was an oxygen filter, which was why when I found the Celestial 4 bodysuit, I chose to keep it, despite the high resale price. N-2390's low atmosphere made it necessary to use an oxygen filter outside the habitation zones. While the air was breathable, doing so for more than a few hours would have detrimental effects on a person's health. The suit had increased the time I could spend outside the habitation domes scavenging for repairable tech greatly. So, over the past months, I had managed to earn more credits than ever before. The suit had more than covered its potential sale price, and was the reason I had almost 1,300 credits stashed away in my personal account. Though, I would need far more than that if I was going to buy myself a ticket off this desolate planet. My father only earned 500 credits a month, minus our accommodation fees, which were deducted from his wage. Even with me adding to our finances with scavenging, we were not well off by any measure. The ground shook as the ship dropped its heavy cargo, causing the pile of metal scrap Samson and I had climbed on for a better vantage point to begin shifting beneath our feet. Leaping up, I engaged my suit's thrusters to propel myself into the air, barely escaping as the pile started to collapse. Samson, who was slower to react, tumbled down the side of the scrap, swearing violently as he did so. Laughing at the man's misfortune, I moved to the next pile, landing only for a moment before leaping away as I headed towards the drop zone. He should have known better. Samson had been salvaging for far longer than I had, and knew the piles were unstable at the best of times. I'd fallen off several when I was younger, and had learnt not to remain on them when ships were unloading. Even with my head start, Samson still beat me to the newly delivered scrap. His own suit was much better quality, and he could fly directly to the new area. My suit's thrusters were only useful for short bursts, which meant I was one of the last to arrive. Fortunately, there were still sections unoccupied by others, and I quickly laid claim to one. There were several unspoken rules regarding scavenging on N-2390. You could not work an area occupied by another, nor was it acceptable to steal something salvaged by the person working that area. Bartering and trading were permitted, though I was always careful about such things, lest I find myself on the losing end of the deal. Cautiously, I worked through the pile I had claimed. It was heavy work, so I needed to be careful to avoid destabilizing the mountain of metal scrap. 5 hours later, I was struggling to contain my disappointment at the lack of decent findings, but I would keep going until I had cleared the section of anything valuable. I had heard the tale of more than one scavenger who had left a section only to discover that another had found something of high value after they had departed. I moved aside another chunk of scrap metal, then stared excitedly down at the rectangular device poking out from the pile. Looking around, I made sure no one was watching, then grabbed the thin, rectangular-shaped device. The scuffed and faded words, Beltran Flight Simulation Module, emblazoned on the side of the device made my heart pound rapidly. Turning the device over in my hands, I examined the module for any visible signs of damage. It appeared to be physically intact from what I could see externally, and I breathed deeply, trying to calm my increasing excitement.